Welcome to today's Build Your Simulation Moldflow IQ. We are going to be doing a deeper dive into the What's New presentation, really. So today we chose the user interface and then various workflows that we introduced. And today we will have Kristen Kilroy, who many of you have probably worked with on support, give the presentation and demoing. And if you have any questions, as always, please feel free to type those in that little box there. And then we have myself, Kristen, and Paul Larder on the line to answer these questions. So for those of you who might be new and wondering what the Autodesk Help webinar series is, it's a live monthly technical discussion typically hosted by the technical support team. However, we do have various people within Autodesk Moldflow who can give the presentation and help out. Many of you have worked with Jay Shoemaker, we've had Hano, and then several of the application engineers. Generally, it's about 20 to 40 minutes with a discussion and QA, and we like to demo the software too. And then the topics are most often chosen from the survey that we receive from different users or support cases that come in. Some of the common and more popular topics have been on DOEs, matching simulation to reality, and then compression and injection compression molding. The upcoming topics that we have are a workflow for SimStudio, which is new to 2016, and into Moldflow and troubleshooting there. We've gotten a lot of questions around Advisor and possibly doing a topic around that, and then as well as the API scripts. And then you can sign up at the SimHub events section, which is on the new landing page for Moldflow 2016. Sign up in the forums. We do direct emails. And then afterwards, we also post this to the YouTube channel, and then an email is sent out for those who have registered with the YouTube channel and any content that was given during the webinar. So what's in the news? We have released the 2016 products, and then also we released a couple weeks ago the Service Pack 1 is available. If by chance you don't see that in the application manager, you have to update your application manager. Just something to note there. And then older news would be the Autodesk accounts being the new landing page for the download support and managing subscription. And then many of you are probably familiar with the support knowledge articles that we write, which can be found in the AKN or the Knowledge Network. These are generated from cases that we have received, and then we turn these into articles and then publish them to the AKN. Here you can see just a list of the newest ones for this month. And with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Kristen, and then she will go through the agenda and the various topics that we're going to discuss and then demo. And definitely if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Kate. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today to talk a little bit about Synergy and Insight 2016, specifically more towards Synergy in terms of user interface and workflows. So if you sat in on the previous webinar, Hano our PM gave a great presentation on an overview of what's new in 2016. But this is kind of a deeper dive into it, and hopefully getting into some demos towards the end of this presentation. So what we're going to talk about is kind of some general notes and general uncategorized new features of Moldflow, and then move into specifically user interface and workflow enhancements. And then following that, we'll go into import and export enhancements, as well as post-processing. So, and then after that, we'll go into the demo, time permitting. And hopefully, if you guys have any questions along the way, as Kate mentioned, just feel free to write them in the box there, and we'll be happy to answer them either behind the scenes, or we might be even able to do some demos. Okay, so the first thing that I kind of wanted to cover here is, as I mentioned, this 2016 release for Insight and Synergy is one of the largest releases to date for Moldflow. So we wanted to just emphasize that this release really was put into, all the new features were put into effect given your content. So whenever you go into Moldflow for the first time, it sometimes prompts you for participation in Customer Involvement Program or the Desktop Analytics Program. And both of those are just features in Moldflow that record things such as what your graphics are, how you're using the program in terms of session length, which products you're using more often, and then if you're using like local or cloud storage via A360. So if you wanted to go in and enable those, you can actually locate those through the ribbon there. For the ACP, go into Customer Involvement under Community, and then for the Desktop Analytics, go into Help, and then Desktop Analytic Program. And kind of leading into, or from that, would be the enhancements. So if you come across a feature that you would like to see in Moldflow, please write it to the Moldflow Idea Station. And once you get this PowerPoint, you can take a look at it through this link here, or you can access it through the forums because it'll be posted there also. But basically what it is it's a forum for developers and other users to view your enhancement ideas and comment and expand on them. And as you can see there, we do use those ideas for new releases. So depending on criticality and some back-end stuff with new features, we'll try and see if it's possible to place it into one of the new releases. Okay, so next here, I know being in support, we've heard quite a few times on requests to borrow licenses from Moldflow, and with this release, we actually enabled it to be possible. So here's just steps to be able to borrow that license if you go off-site somewhere and want to take that license with you on, say, a laptop rather than your typical workstation. This will be the way to do it. And what's great about it is you can check it out for a specific amount of time, and it'll automatically check the license back in after that period is up. Okay, so moving into the user interface and workflow enhancement section here. The first item here that's kind of new for 2016 is how we displayed the menu options in the ribbon. So if you recall, for 2015, you would have the typical Home, Tools, View, Start and Learn, and Community tabs that were kind of defaulted to the user interface there. For 2016, we actually enabled all the sub-tabs that usually only appear after you get into certain sections of those tabs. So geometry, mesh, boundary conditions, and so forth. Those are actually permanent in there. And you can control those, whether or not you want to see those or not, via right-clicking and controlling hide or show each of those tabs there. And what's neat, another neat feature going along with this is if you're switching between studies, often you have to switch between different tabs there. So for 2016, we actually enabled an option there to lock the study tab state. So what that means is if you're working in the mesh tab on one study and want to switch to another study there, if you select the lock tab state option, then once you switch into the next study, it'll immediately go into that mesh tab. So it's a neat workflow enhancement that definitely can save some time if you're switching through studies often. So one of the great new features of 2016 is the layer organization. So as you can see here, this is a new look to the layers panel in terms of it makes it more streamlined with how other CAD programs and so forth are set up, where you can set up different folders and organize it to, say, have all your mesh in one folder, or by cavities, or however you feel like you want to customize. And then once you have that set up and organized, sometimes it can get confusing figuring out which object is in which layer. So the highlight feature is actually pretty neat new feature in there where that you can enable it, and if you're in the layers tab, it'll highlight the objects that are in the study window and show you which objects are in there, and vice versa. So if you're in the study window, select a element or beam element or so forth, it'll show you what layer it is on the layers pane. So that's pretty neat to help out with workflow as well. And to go along with the layers enhancement, the expand layer tools has been upgraded to include pretty much anything from nodes, tetras, triangles, and beams. So it's great to do other things other than just triangles in there. And then when you go to copy and paste, or copy or translate certain elements or objects in your study, there's also now an option to specify whether you move it into a new layer or into the active layer, or even the layer that you're currently in. So that kind of saves a step from reassigning that to a different layer if you wanted that. Okay, so often we come in support, we come into customers that are asking, oh, we don't know if we set the valve gates in their study. A great new feature here is we added glyphs or symbols to certain items in Moldflow's interface so that it makes it easier to see them. So you can see there it's for cooling inlets, outlets, valve gates, and then induction coils. And it's easy to activate them. Just go into layer display and check the little tick box for indicators, or else right-click the layer panel and enable the indicators via that way. And you can kind of see it on the middle picture there. That's the valve gate picture, and it actually lists the name of the valve gate also. So if you have multiple valve gates in there and you're not quite sure which one say the log files are pointing towards, you can go in there and look in your study, and it'll show the name of the valve gate there. Okay, so for the user interface for Insight as well as Advisor, we actually included a new feature on being able to add the study name to each of the studies in the display window. So you can see in the window there, it's showing the name of the study. So if you're switching between different iterations of study that look very similar, this can be very helpful, even when you're using the tile or split screen. It'll help you figure out which study you're on while you're switching through those different analyses. Okay, so some additional tools. I mentioned the right mouse button a few times already, but we did change around the general menu for right mouse button clicking on the user interface, so inside the study window. 2015, you could see there, you're used to seeing it set up like that. We actually added a few new features to 2016, including moving the move and locking options in there, as well as the view. So that makes it a little bit more, like I mentioned, streamlined with your workflow. And then we also moved, it's kind of grayed out there, but properties and change property type. We moved it closer to your mouse click, so it makes it a quicker for you to go down and click properties after you want to assign new properties or change the properties of a certain item in your study. Okay, so there are times where you want to look at the study property, or excuse me, the study notes or the log files for a study without actually opening it. Say you have a very large study, or you just want certain information really quick. You can actually do that now without having to open the study up. You can do this by either right-clicking on the study in the study pane there, or I'll go to the next slide here. You can also do it via the job manager. So the best way to do it would be through the study pane, because you can see logs for other projects or other analyses as well. The job manager is only able to pull for the current project, so any ones that are currently running there. But again, streamlining that workflow and making it a quicker and easier process for you guys to navigate through the user interface there. Okay, so here's a really neat one that I know many people have asked for in the past. Being able to copy study settings, so process settings, materials, temperatures, and so forth. All that can be copied from study to study now, given they're the same mesh type, and you're able to say if you have multiple iterations of a design and want to check out each one with making sure all the settings are set correctly, or set the same, excuse me, this is a great way to keep that consistency from study to study. So as I mentioned, the copied parameters are materials, mesh types, mesh parameters, process, sequence, process settings. So all that information is copied, and you can go in and tweak those afterwards, but the only thing there is that in the process settings area, you can't isolate individual parameters. So if you only wanted to change, say, the VP switchover, excuse me, if you only wanted to copy over the VP switchover, that you can't do. It has to be kind of all or nothing type of deal there. And then another thing is if you're pasting these copied parameters into your your study there, it can't be undone. So if you had previous settings in there, you lost those once you paste these in there. But still, as long as you keep that in your mind whenever you're doing it, like I said, it keeps that nice fast-paced workflow for you. Okay, and moving on to import and export options. So the developers have worked on enhancing the process of importing CAD models into Moldflow. For instance, they did make it a lot more stable, and then they added a couple new features there. You can match the CAD body colors, and then also you can import the CAD name. So this makes it a lot easier if you're involved in the actual design of the part. You're able to carry over what you've been calling it and what colors you've been using in your CAD system in Moldflow, and it kind of makes it a little easier to transition from CAD to Moldflow that way. So you can see there, whenever you do import your CAD model, there's an option under the direct import for design link to layer name based on CAD name. And then also in the layers pane, there's the option for CAD color for display options. Okay, so you're now able to export the warped geometry for your studies. So if there was an instance where you wanted to import the warped geometry into your CAD system and compare it to the original part, as you can see down on the bottom right there, the warpage is going in, so it's warping in from the original part, the blue part there. So it's a neat way to compare the before and after models. And the file formats for that are SAT or step files. And then you can also export multi-bodies. So as you can see there, to do this, all you would do is go into the warped the results panel in the ribbon, and then under warp shape, you can select CAD file there. Now, when you do this, we do recommend that the CAD model be very stable. So running it through CAD Doctor or SimStudio or some other CAD check software prior to importing into Moldflow and analyzing it would be a good recommendation from us to get better experience for exporting the warped mesh file. So moving on to post-processing, there were some modifications to a couple results capabilities here. For one here, whenever you're making a probe plot, before there used to be these large globes or spheres that indicated where your start and stops were. However, you couldn't tell the difference between the start and stop points. So this has been changed to arrow-looking or tree-looking devices, as you can see on the right, for the start indicators, and the stop would be the round spheres at the right. So, like I said, makes it easier for you to be able to quickly see where the start and stop points are on that. Okay, so this was a very desirable option or feature many users requested in the past, being able to show the same points on the examine plots. So say you have multiple studies and you want to compare different gating points as shown here. You can tile them, and then once you select the examine on one of the studies in the locked views, you'll be able to see the results on all of the open plots there. So it's great for, like I said, comparing and making sure you're looking at the same points throughout the board there. And then to go along with that, when looking at, say, warpage or deflection, this can carry over to the query results, where it shows, you can show the same point for each of those. And then we also added the study name to those. So if you are comparing different ones, so here it's showing box V2, V3, and V1, you're able to tell which deflection points, or which nodes, rather, are on each of those boxes. Okay, and then finally here, for Moldflow Communicator, there were a couple changes here. What we've done was actually simplified the layer panel for customizing what layers are viewed whenever you publish those results to an MFR file. So you can hide specific layers if you don't want someone to see those, just say cluttering up the screen there. It's a nice way to make it a nice, clean looking presentation for whoever you're making that MFR file for. And then the other thing is we allowed for more than 2 studies to be compared. So this is nice if you have, like I mentioned, multiple iterations and you're trying to figure out what the best best setup would be, or best design. You're able to send these off to whomever, say the designer or customer, and say, hey, we've got multiple studies here. Take a look at these, see what you think, and get back to us. So it's a great way to utilize that. All right, I'm going to pause here and check with Kate. Kate, do we have any questions today?
Hey, Kristen. We have had a couple come in, but myself and Paul, have been able to answer those live. One of the questions that came in, though, that is, can we hide, when you were discussing the glyphs for the valve gating, Chuck wanted to know if we were able to hide those, and that is possible, but you have to turn it off the indicator in the layer.
Yep.
Nazarene wanted to know if the mesh diagnostics button was gone when you were comparing the 2014, or 2015 rather, wow, and 2016 when you right click. It's not gone, it's just there's an additional click. You have to right click, view, and then mesh diagnostics. And Mike wants to know if we're able to change the log font, or excuse me, the text size and type in the results window. This has come up quite a bit, actually, and I think we are looking into adjusting that. When you open the result or click on a result, the font is smaller than what it was in 2015.
We can't change it in the actual window. We can only change the font in the logs, unfortunately. So I'll look into that a bit further.
Okay, thanks, Paul. And then...
Okay, great. Sounds like a lot of good questions. Go ahead.
Yeah. Regarding the Moldflow communicator, they would like to know, can the polymer details be seen? You might need to expand on that one a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I might be able to pull that up here while we wait on that.
Mm-hmm.
But let's see.
And then several of these questions you can also demonstrate just being in product. So if you want to
Yep.
proceed, that would be good.
Sure. I'll go ahead and go on with the demo while we wait for Communicator to load there. Okay, so first thing I wanted to just show you guys here is whenever you go and import, like I mentioned earlier, you're able to control if the colors of your CAD program are transferred or the name of the part is transferred while you import it. So let me pull up a model here. And this is just an Autodesk Inventor file. So I'll go ahead and open that up. And as you can see here, you can either have it pull that name or else uncheck it and just leave the default name for whenever Moldflow imports it. So once it's imported, as you can see, the part is this orangish color, and that's actually pulled straight from, sorry about that, straight from Inventor. So I set the color in Inventor, and Moldflow was able to pull that color and keep that consistency there for you. So one thing I did want to mention before moving forward is I know like I mentioned, there's a lot of new features here that it seems like you guys are really excited to dive into. So if you go to any of the help pages for Moldflow, we actually have a help section that's encompassing all of the new features and new enhancements for each of the products. So here's the user interface, and you can see there's a ton of great summaries for each of these new features in here. So it's something to think about when you're trying these things out yourself. All right, do that right now. And then, okay, so when you go into Moldflow 2016, as I mentioned, the tabs up here, this is going to be defaulted to show every single one of these. So you have geometry, mesh, boundary conditions, and so forth, all showing all the time. And I mentioned earlier that if you right-click on the ribbon area, you'll actually be able to limit those. So if you wanted to, say, only show specific ones, let's do this here. So this show panels here enables you to actually customize which one of these panels you're showing. So say we only want to see, we don't want to see, let's do Windows and then viewport. So that cut it down to a much smaller window and very easy to kind of easily locate what you need very quickly. Okay. So here, like I mentioned, the lock study tab state. So if you enable that, and let's say I go into the mesh tab here, and then switch to another study I have open, you can see it's set to the mesh tab. So it defaults to that whenever you're switching between studies here. Like I said, to help your workflow out. Okay. All right, so the other thing here, as I mentioned, the properties has been moved and the change property type has been moved. So before you had to go all the way down to the bottom, which kind of took some effort to get down there. So for the new location of it, it's great whenever you're doing stuff for fast. Say you want to change the beam elements here. properties. You can do that very quickly here. So that's great. Okay. And then the next thing I wanted to cover here is the layers panel. So you're all familiar with how Moldflow puts different layers in whenever you mesh apart. It'll throw a new layer in for meshed elements or new nodes and whatnot. The new setup is using these folders. So you can add folders or delete folders as you like. You can drag things around. Say you want the phone mesh in there, and then the CAD geometry in there also. So you can drag and drop them as needed to better organize it for yourself. And then you can also deselect or hide an entire folder, or you can go in and change the display of it. So say you wanted it to be a lighter blue for cooling channels, or the nodes rather. But it's, like I said, it's an easier way for you guys. We've been working to get that workflow down for you so it's as painless as possible for you to go through and create a study and get your results to proceed forward with your analyses. Okay, so let's say here that I have another part integration here, so it'll pull up, and this one has a little hole at the end, different from the original part. But we want to copy the same settings over that we have in the study we already have created. So to do this, it would be using that copy process settings or copy settings option. So whenever you're in here, if you have the study open, all you would do is right-click it and do copy study settings. And then to whichever study you want to set it to, or even multiple ones, you can just, or sorry, not multiple ones, I'm thinking about something else there. All you would do is right-click it and then paste study settings. And then once you do that, this tab opens here, and this just shows kind of what all the settings will be set to. So in this case, it's setting everything to the same material, same temperatures, and then same process settings here. And then you can just add a note saying, it's already defaulted to add a note saying it was copied from the first study. So you can add iteration 1, and that'll add to the study notes of the new one. So we'll go ahead and select OK. Might take a second here to load for us. Okay, and then we can go back into this one, and it has the same material listed here, and then all the process settings are the same as well. So only thing we would have to do here is mesh it and then set it up to be the same cooling and so forth, and then you'll be as matched up to the original analysis as you could. So like I mentioned, that's great for when you're comparing. In this case, it was a geometry change. You can also do any other types of changes. So say you wanted everything the same except for you wanted different temperatures. You wanted a higher temperature for your mold. You can go in, do that copy, and then go into the second study and change those temperatures manually to adjust for that change. Then you'll be reassured that you have the original settings, just that one minor tweak there. Okay. All right, so we had that question on the indicators. This here I just set up a real quick hot runner system here. As you can see, there's a valve gate with this indicator there's a valve gate on the end of it, and it's named primary valve gate. So if we go into properties here, oops, let's go in here a little closer. Okay, so we just named it primary valve gate, so we can change that and watch the name change on that valve gate. And you can see there it's live update, so once you click apply, it'll apply it. Now, as for display of that, what you would actually do is click anywhere in the Layers tab here, and you can see the Indicators option here. It has a check next to it indicating that you're able to see them. So if we uncheck it, it will hide those for that layer. So let me find out which layer that is. We can actually try the highlight option and go in here and highlight that. And you can see it is highlighting the beams on feed system. So let's go in here, turn indicators off for it. So it's layer specific as well as able to turn it off and on. So that's a pretty neat feature as well. All right, so let's see here. We mentioned the CAD color geometry. There's also more customization available via colors through the options menu. So you can change everything from mesh line color. So if you don't like these black lines in here, you think it's too dark whenever you're looking at it, you can go in and let's say change it to a gray. See how that looks now. And I know for some FEA programs, they show more like this on a lighter line color. So like I said, it's to try and streamline from your CAD software through Moldflow, through your FEA program, or through whatever programs you use to try and keep that consistency throughout them. And then along those same lines, you're able to also change the mouse settings a little bit more. So you can reverse the directions if you're used to a different direction, rotation or zoom, then you're able to reverse that to what you're used to. Okay. Kate, do we have any questions coming in?
Looks like we're good for the moment.
Or anything you think we should demo? Okay. All right. Let's see here. Okay. So I mentioned on one of my slides that you get more customization available through being able to show the study name. So let me go to this here. Show that Windows again. Okay, so under the Windows in the View tab of the ribbon and then User Interface, you can see that there's the option for Study Tile, and then there's also an option for Roller. So if you enable that, it'll give you the scale down there, or turn it off if you wanted a clean screen for that. Same with the Study Title. So in this case, it's nice to have that up there if you're going in and, say, doing a tiling of all your studies. You'll be able to see that study name on each of those studies. Okay. All right, so say you wanted to do 2 cavities of this, and you wanted to copy everything over. You still have the functionality to adjust all layers so you're showing all of them or hiding all but one, same as 2015. So let's go ahead and enable all those and go into copy that cavity, and we go to the translate tool. Okay, try this again. Translate, and then into the tools there. Okay. And you can see here that new option to copy it into the same layer there, or into a new layer, or the active layer. So if we wanted to, say, move into a new layer, we'll move it, let's say, over to here and apply. And so there we actually moved it. What you can also do is copy it, and it'll do the same thing, but you can see here that it moved it all into the same layer. So this is kind of bad for a single cavity here because it threw everything into the same layer. But for copy, say if you only wanted to copy certain things, you would just highlight certain items and do the copy, and it could be nice to have it in a single layer like that. It also makes it a little easier to see which items are under certain layers, so you can manually reassign them after you put them all in that one layer. Okay. Let's see here. I'll pull up some of the results here, and let's see. Let's give the examine tool a look at. So let me duplicate one of these studies real quick. Sorry, it's taking a moment here. One other thing I can mention while this is loading is I know a lot of you have asked about the SimStudio Tools option. Moldflow included this. Actually, all the simulation software in 2016 has included SimStudio in the installations. So if you haven't tried playing around with that, as mentioned by Kate earlier in the presentation, we will be doing an interface, so switching from SimStudio tools into Moldflow and then back, or from Moldflow into SimStudios to modify parts. Because this is, if you're familiar with Fusion, this replaced Inventor Fusion. So it's you can make changes to your geometry, model new features on there, simplify features. So if you have rounds, you could take those rounds away, and make any changements, adjustments, and pull it back into Moldflow and be able to now analyze the new iteration of the part. So it's a neat tool, and I encourage you, if you haven't played around with it, give it a try and see how you like it. And like I said, there will be a future webinar on that. Okay, so I duplicated that study just so we have a couple different results to look at. So let me close out of a couple of these studies here. Okay. So if we go into, say, the results again, pull up, oops. There we go. Okay, so we'll just tile the screen here. Do it that way instead, making it a little easier to see. And then let's lock the view and lock the results. That way they move with each other. And just zoom in a little bit here. And then go to one of the results here. So let's say fill time. All right, so for this it's going to be the same for each of these, but if you had different study, you can do it for that different study, and you can see here it shows the study name at the top, so you know which one you're working on, just in case you have a different, or you have multiple studies open at once. So under the Examine tool here, if you click on that and click anywhere on the part, it'll automatically update to show that same spot on the other part as well. So all you need to do is just make sure the plots are locked, and then you'll be able to even do multiple points by holding Control in and see where differences might be, or if you have two different gating locations, you can see which one's filling at a certain area at a certain time and so forth. So it's great even for presentations. If you wanted to capture that, you can just take a screenshot of that and be able to show real time, or right on there, what that value is at that point for both of the studies. Okay. And then this one doesn't have a deflection analysis, or I'd show the query results, but what I'll do is I'll open the floor to any more questions, and then if not, we might give you that extra couple minutes left to give that back to you for your day. All right, Kate, Paul, any questions out there?
Well, we had one on the selection now. When you select something and do copy move, the original selection disappears, so we can't delete it. That came up as a case the other day, so we were looking into that.
Okay. Yeah, with all these new features, there is, if you do see any issues with any of these features, let us know. Throw it on the forums, contact one of us in support if you're on subscription. We want to try and fix these for you so it's not a, so it's more of, like I said, a workflow enhancement rather than just something that's not working. So. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, like Kate mentioned, this slide deck will be available. That's the wrong link down there, but it'll be autodesk.box.com/moldflow11 rather than CFD there. But like I said, we'll be uploading the presentation as well as the YouTube video to YouTube, or the recording to YouTube rather. And we want to thank you again for joining us today for Moldflow webinar, and hope you have a great rest of your days.